Hey Reddit, my name's Jenna, I am 24 years old, and this story is about how my so-called stepdad thought he was the king of my family's hotel, until I served him a reality check with the side of police sirens. To really understand why this whole thing made my blood boil, I need to give you some backstory. My dad, Mark, passed away when I was 19 years old. He was only 49, which is way too young, and his death flipped my entire world upside down. My dad was not just my father, he was my mentor, my role model, and the backbone of everything we built as a family. He had started our little hotel in Clearwater, Florida, when he was just 28 years old. Back then I was a baby, and as I grew up the hotel grew with me. It was not a huge, flashy resort with fountains and marble floors. It was a cozy 28-room family-run place. Seashell lamps in every room, key cards that sometimes jammed if you swiped them too fast, and a little front desk bell that half the kids in town would smack just to watch me run out and get annoyed. My dad was the type of man who could fix a pool filter in the morning, unclog a toilet in the afternoon, and still crack a corny joke while flipping pancakes for guests in the breakfast lounge. People came back year after year, not just because of the hotel but because of him. He made people feel like they were visiting family, and I loved him more than I can put into words. My childhood was not filled with dance recitals or soccer practice. Instead, I was rolling silverware for brunch, cleaning rooms, negotiating with laundry services that tried to rip us off, and balancing invoices on Saturday mornings. And you know what? I loved it. It was our life. My dad used to look at me while we worked side by side and say, "You are going to be better than me at this one day, Jenna. You've got the brains and the guts." When he passed, it felt impossible to keep going, but the staff, people who had known me since I was little, stood by me. They treated me like family because I was. Together we kept his dream alive. It was not easy, but I was determined not to let his legacy disappear. Then my mom, Susan, who is 46, remarried. That is when Rick came into the picture. Rick was 50, divorced twice with 2 kids he barely saw. Brandon, who was 14, and Kylie, who was 11. The man practically radiated midlife crisis energy. He wore gold chains, shirts unbuttoned way too low, and after watching a few motivational videos online, suddenly decided he was a business mogul. He strutted into our hotel like he had bought it off the market, except he had not. Spoiler alert. The hotel was legally mine. My dad made sure of that in his will. First, I tried to tolerate him. My mom seemed happy, and I figured that if she was willing to put up with his loud laugh and constant bragging, then I could survive it too. But Rick was not the type of man who blended quietly into the background. He immediately began making himself everyone's problem. He would walk around the front desk and tell the staff, "When I'm in charge, things will be different." He would corner guests in the lobby and brag, "I'm the owner here, I'll get you a special deal." He even tried to fire our head housekeeper, Maria, who had worked with us for 20 years, because he claimed her vibe was negative. That was the moment I made it crystal clear to him that he had no power here. I told him flatly that he did not get to make decisions, especially when the deed had my name on it. His fake Rolex almost looked like it would spin off his wrist from how much he waved his arms when I shut him down. And his kids, let me just say they were a nightmare. Brandon treated the hotel like a playground. I once caught him trying to ride a luggage cart down the staircase like it was a roller coaster. Kylie smeared lip gloss all over the wallpaper because she thought she was creating art. They grabbed muffins with their bare hands from the breakfast lounge while paying guests were eating. Every single time I called Rick out on it, he brushed it off with, "They're just kids, Jenna. Don't be uptight." When I told him that if his children caused damage, he would be paying for it, he smirked and said, "What damages? It's family property." That one sentence made me want to scream because it was not family property, it was mine. Still, I held back for my mom's sake. That was until the night I now call the concert incident. Rick decided one weekend that he was going to invite his so-called business partners to stay at the hotel. These men were nothing more than drinking buddies who thought they were geniuses because they once invested in cryptocurrency. Instead of booking rooms like normal guests, Rick walked behind the front desk and grabbed keys like he was Santa handing out gifts. He told the staff, "Don't worry, it's on me." Except once again it was not. At midnight I got a call from Tommy, our night clerk. His voice sounded exhausted as he said, "Jenna, you're gonna want to come down here. Room 212 is bad." When I walked into that room, I could not believe my eyes. It was a full-blown frat party. Music was blasting, beer bottles everywhere, and one guy was standing on the bed shirtless with a tie around his head like he thought he was in a college comedy movie. Guests 3 floors down had already complained. I told them firmly, "Gentlemen, you need to quiet down and settle your room charges at the desk." The guy with the tie smirked at me and said, "Oh honey, we're V's." Rick said this place is his. We don't pay. Then Rick himself strutted out of the bathroom holding a whiskey glass, puffing his chest out like a peacock and said, "Yeah, Jenna, they're with me. Don't worry about the bill." That was the final straw. I pulled my phone out of my pocket and dialed 911 in front of them. Rick's smirk evaporated when I calmly told the dispatcher, "Hi, yes, I have trespassers refusing to pay for rooms in my hotel. Please send officers." Rick's face went from smug alpha male to confused middle-aged man in seconds. The police showed up quickly, small-town perks. When they opened the door to room 212, it was like walking into chaos. There was a broken lamp, wine stains all over the carpet, cigars in what was clearly a non-smoking room, and someone had even filled the bathroom sink with ice and beer like it was a college cooler. The officers did not waste time. The men were cuffed for trespassing and disorderly conduct. Rick tried to argue, shouting, "You can't do this, I'm the owner." The officer looked at me, and when I showed him the deed with my name on it, he actually laughed in Rick's face. But the real cherry on top came when the officers searched the room. In one of the drawers they found a baggie of cocaine. That turned everything from a noise complaint into a criminal case. Rick's friends were arrested, and Rick himself was detained for questioning since the room had been booked under his name. My mom was mortified, and honestly I think that was the moment she started seeing him for who he really was. The next morning when I walked through the lobby, the staff looked at me like it was Christmas. Maria hugged me and said, "Boss, you finally did it. You put him in his place." Rick has not set foot in the hotel since that night, and my mom is reevaluating her life choices, to put it gently. Business has never been better. Guests left glowing reviews online saying things like, "The owner runs a tight ship, you feel safe here." Apparently, kicking freeloaders out and standing your ground is good for your reputation. So yeah, don't mess with a hotel kid who grew up folding towels like origami. After the concert incident, I thought the drama was finally over. The freeloaders were gone, the police had done their job, and Rick had been humiliated in front of the entire staff and half the town. But apparently Rick was not the type to go down quietly. The man who had strutted around my hotel like he was the self-proclaimed king of Clearwater decided to flip the script and play the victim. The morning after the arrests, my phone was blowing up. Not with guests, not with staff, but with Rick himself. Dozens of missed calls, long text messages filled with excuses, and an actual voicemail where his voice cracked like he had just run a marathon. He claimed I had set him up, that I had planted things in the room to ruin him, and that the police were corrupt and out to get him. According to him, this was all part of my grand scheme to push him out of my mom's life and steal the hotel from under him. The irony was almost laughable, considering the hotel had always been mine to begin with. When he realized I wasn't answering, he switched tactics. He started calling my mom. At first, she did what she always did. Listen with that soft patience she reserved for people who didn't deserve it. He cried over the phone about how unfair it was, how the guys he invited weren't really criminals, how he was just trying to network and bring in business for us. He begged her to come to the station and bail him out, promising that he had learned his lesson and that it would never happen again. He went on and on about how the cops had it out for him because of his connections, and how the whole thing was blown out of proportion. But this time something shifted. My mom had been humiliated right alongside him. She had watched her new husband get led away in handcuffs while the entire town whispered about how her daughter had to clean up his mess. She had to walk through our lobby with guests staring at her like she was complicit in everything. And she was angry, angrier than I had ever seen her. When Rick begged for her help, she finally snapped. She told him she was not bailing him out. She told him that he had embarrassed her, embarrassed me, and embarrassed the memory of the man who had built the hotel. She reminded him that he was not the owner, not the boss, and not even the man she thought he was when she agreed to marry him. For once in his life, Rick had no audience to feed his ego. No staff to intimidate, no guests to lie to, no fake business partners to puff up his chest in front of. Just 4 cold walls, a metal toilet, and a fluorescent light buzzing overhead. He spent 2 nights in county jail. After Rick's little vacation in county, things around the hotel actually felt peaceful for the first time in months. The staff walked with a little more spring in their step. Guests weren't being ambushed by Rick's fake promises of special deals, and for a brief moment it felt like we were finally back to normal. But of course, Rick's chaos had ripple effects, and those ripples showed up in the form of his kids, Brandon and Kylie. At first, I thought I had seen the last of them. After all, their dad was too busy licking his wounds and avoiding public humiliation to drag them back to the hotel. But a few weeks later, my mom told me that they were coming for a weekend visit. She explained that Rick's ex, their mom, was insisting on it, and she didn't want to start unnecessary drama. I decided to grit my teeth and prepare myself, hoping that maybe the kids had calmed down since their last tornado-level stay. Spoiler, they had not. From the moment they arrived, it was like unleashing two wild raccoons into a glassware shop. Brandon immediately made a beeline for the pool, cannonballing and fully clothed while guests were lounging nearby. Kylie, not to be outdone, grabbed a stack of complimentary towels and started tossing them into the water like confetti. Within 20 minutes, they were hurling inflatable pool toys at unsuspecting guests, screaming with laughter as if this was their private water park. A beach ball smacked an elderly couple in the face, one of the floaties hit a toddler, and I could see families gathering their things and leaving, muttering under their breath about how the place had gone downhill. The worst part? When I told Brandon and Kylie to knock it off, they just grinned and said their dad told them the hotel was theirs too, so no one could tell them what to do. It was the same smug entitlement I had seen in Rick, only distilled into preteen form. Watching them terrorize paying guests while repeating their father's delusions was the last straw for me. That evening, I sat down and made a decision that I should have made months earlier. I called their mom directly. I explained that unless Rick paid for damages up front, his kids were no longer welcome at the hotel. I told her about the chaos they had caused, the way they disrupted guests, and the fact that my business reputation was on the line every time they set foot on the property. To my surprise, she actually agreed with me. She said she had been dealing with Rick's antics for years and had no interest in enabling his children to behave like little wrecking balls. So I put it in writing. No money up front, no access. The next time Brandon and Kylie begged to use the pool, I shut it down before it even started. Guests first, family drama second. It felt harsh, but I knew it was the only way to protect what my dad built and the business I was keeping alive. Word spread quickly among the staff that the mini-ricks were officially banned, and they treated it like a victory parade. For the first time, I could walk through the pool area without worrying about someone diving off a luggage cart or turning the hot tub into a bubble bath. I've literally banned my step-siblings from the pool. After the chaos with Rick, the arrests, and the kid drama at the pool, I had a long talk with myself about the hotel and where things were going. For too long, I had been running things the way my dad had always done, keeping prices low, bending over backwards to accommodate guests, and trying to please everyone. That was my dad's style, and it worked for him because he had a way of making people feel like family. But times had changed. Costs were higher, labor was harder to come by, and if I wanted this place to survive for the long haul, I had to adapt. The concert incident had been humiliating, but it also made me realize something important. Guests didn't just want a cheap stay. They wanted a place where they felt valued and safe. When I called the police and kicked those freeloaders out, people saw that I was serious about protecting the hotel. It shifted how they looked at me, and it shifted how I looked at myself as a business owner. I was no longer the kid folding towels in the back room. I was the one making decisions, and those decisions had real weight. So I did something bold. I raised the rates. For years we had been charging way less than the bigger chain hotels nearby, because my dad liked being the affordable family spot. But I ran the numbers, compared reviews, and realized we were underselling ourselves. Guests consistently left glowing feedback about how personal the experience was, how the staff remembered their names, how breakfast felt like it came from a friend's kitchen instead of a factory line. People were already choosing us over the chain hotels because of the atmosphere. And if they were willing to put up with seashell lamps and the occasional sticky keycard, it meant they valued more than just price. I started small. A modest increase on the nightly rates, plus a bump for peak weekends. I expected pushback, but the opposite happened. Guests didn't blink. In fact, a few even commented that we were still a bargain compared to what they paid elsewhere. And then something wild happened. Our reputation actually grew. People respected that we ran a tight ship. Families who had seen me kick Rick and his circus out told others that this was a hotel where nonsense wasn't tolerated. Word of mouth worked better than any ad campaign. By the end of the quarter, when I sat down with the books, I had to double-check the numbers because I thought I had calculated something wrong. We had made an extra $15,000 compared to the same time the year before. It wasn't just a fluke either. Occupancy rates stayed steady, reviews stayed strong, and guests were actually treating the property with more respect. It was as if raising the price also raised the level of seriousness in how people approached staying here. The staff noticed it too. Tips were better, morale was higher, and no one felt like they were working for scraps anymore. Even Maria, who had been with us for 2 decades, pulled me aside one morning and said she hadn't seen the place this stable since my dad was alive. Hearing that made me choke up in a way I hadn't expected. Standing in the lobby one night, after the last guests had checked in and the breakfast lounge lights were dimmed, I thought about how far we had come. From that little seashell lamp hotel my dad built when I was a baby, to me sitting at the helm now, making decisions that secured its future. For the first time in years, I felt like I wasn't just surviving without him. I was making him proud. Dad would have been proud. After the hotel finally stabilized and I thought the drama was behind me, Rick found one last way to crawl out of whatever rock he had been hiding under. If there is one thing about men like him, it is that they never know when to quit. I should have expected it, but I still felt a surge of disbelief when a manila envelope showed up at the front desk one morning. It was not a reservation request, it was not a business flyer, it was a lawsuit. Rick was trying to sue me. The claim? Defamation. According to Rick, my decision to call the police and have his drunken buddies arrested, combined with the fact that word had spread around town about him being hauled off in cuffs, had destroyed his business reputation. The man who strutted around in gold chains, who never ran a business in his life beyond bragging about his networking skills, was now claiming I had single-handedly ruined his professional image. The lawsuit was laughable, but it still forced me to deal with it. First, I was angry. Angry that he was dragging me into court. Angry that he was wasting my time. And angry that he had the audacity to paint himself as the victim after everything. But then I reminded myself of one very important thing. I had receipts. I had the deed to the hotel in my name. I had a police report documenting the trespassing, the noise complaints, the property damage, and the drugs found in the room. I had guests who had filed complaints that very night. I was not scrambling for proof, I was drowning in it. When the court date finally arrived, Rick walked in like he was about to deliver the performance of his life. He had this exaggerated confidence, like he believed he was about to expose me as some evil mastermind plotting against him. He threw around big words in his opening statements, talking about how my malicious actions and calculated lies had ruined his career opportunities. He rambled on about how people no longer trusted him, how he had lost potential investors, and how his name was tarnished in our community. The whole thing sounded like a soap opera monologue. Then it was my turn. My attorney calmly presented the facts. The deed showing I was the sole owner of the hotel. The police report detailing the incident and listing Rick's involvement. Statements from staff and guests who had witnessed the chaos. Every piece of evidence stacked higher and higher, until it was obvious that Rick's claims were not only flimsy but ridiculous. The judge barely let it drag on. After hearing both sides, he looked at Rick with the kind of expression that said he had seen this exact circus act too many times before. He dismissed the case in 10 minutes flat. 10 minutes. That was all it took for Rick's grand scheme to crumble. And then to make the victory even sweeter, the judge ordered Rick to pay my attorney's fees. $4,200. Walking out of that courthouse, I felt lighter than I had in years. Not only had I shut him down once again, but this time he had to dig into his own pocket to cover the cost. For a man who lived on borrowed swagger and cheap illusions, losing money like that was the ultimate slap in the face. He actually had to pay my attorney's fees, $4,200. Sweet justice. When Rick's lawsuit crumbled and the judge shut him down, something shifted permanently in my mom. For months, she had been torn between the image of the man she thought Rick was and the reality of the man he truly revealed himself to be. She had put up with his arrogance, his freeloading, his obnoxious kids, and even the humiliation of watching him be carted off in handcuffs. But when he dragged me to court and tried to paint me as the villain for protecting the hotel, that was the line she would not let him cross. Not long after, she sat me down at the kitchen table in our little apartment above the hotel, and told me she was filing for divorce. She explained that she had been clinging to the hope that maybe Rick was just lost, or that his behavior was the result of stress, but she finally saw it clearly. He was a man who tore things down, not one who built them up. She said something I will never forget, that my dad had built this hotel with love and hard work, and he had raised me to protect it with the same strength. He would have wanted her to stand beside me, not behind a man like Rick. The divorce was swift. Rick tried one last time to bluster and drag things out, but he had no leverage. No property, no claim to the hotel, no allies left in town. Within months, the papers were signed, and my mom walked away from him with her dignity intact. When she moved back into the hotel with me, it felt like something out of a full circle moment. She started helping at the front desk again, smiling at guests the way she had when I was a kid, answering the phones with that calm, welcoming tone everyone remembered. Guests lit up when they saw her back in action. Some who had been coming for years hugged her and said it felt like old times. It wasn't just about filling shifts or keeping things running. It was about restoring the heart of the place. Working side by side with her has been completely different than working under the shadow of Rick. With my mom, it feels like a real team effort. She brings the warmth and personal touch that made the hotel special when my dad was alive, while I handle the logistics, marketing, and finances that keep us competitive today. Together, we've created something that blends tradition with progress. And it's not just the guests who noticed. The staff, who had been cautiously supportive but worn down from all the drama, started thriving again. Maria told me it finally felt like family again. Tommy, our night clerk, said he didn't dread coming in for shifts anymore. Even the newer employees who hadn't been around during my dad's time said they could feel the difference in energy. Every time I walk through the lobby now and see my mom chatting with guests, or when we sit down together at the end of the night to review the books, I feel this deep sense of peace. For so long, I felt like I was carrying the weight of the hotel and my dad's memory alone. But now it feels like the legacy is being shared again, honored the way it deserves to be. Rick thought he was the king of the castle, but the truth is the castle already had a queen. And together, she and I are making sure it will stand stronger than ever. Thank you for being here through this entire wild story. If there's a moral, it's this. Don't let people who only know how to take convince you that they deserve a seat at your table. Protect what you love, stand your ground, and trust that the right people will stand with you. My dad's dream was never about luxury or wealth. It was about family, community, and pride in honest work. And now with my mom back by my side, that dream feels alive again. Goodbye, Reddit, and thanks for listening.